Before I begin this video, I thought I'd start by telling you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in California by two wonderful South Indian parents, and when I was 15 years old, unfortunately, my father had a heart attack and passed away. Sorry, what was that? No, I haven't gotten to Never Have I Ever yet. I'm talking about my real life. Hello everyone, my name is Gara Means Spicy, and today we're going to be talking about the Netflix TV series Never Have I Ever. Many of you have been asking me if I've seen this show before, and if so, what are my thoughts on it? And by many of you, I mean like 2 people, give or take 1. When the first season came out, naturally I was intrigued. I mean, a coming-of-age comedy about an Indian-American teenager? Sign me up! Never mind the fact that I'm 22 when this show came out, but sign me up anyways! Not 5 minutes into the show, Devi's dad has a heart attack and dies. And I was like, hey! I've seen this show before! To say this show bears an uncanny resemblance to my actual life is an understatement. Believe it or not, I tried making a video about this before, right as the last season of the show came out, but I scrapped the whole video because I was being too much of a hater? If that's even a thing. I was nitpicking, and I wasn't really getting my point across properly. And I was saying a lot of dumb things. I remember distinctly making some joke about me and Robert Irwin making a great couple because both our dads are dead.
Silence!
I feel like the writers just could have done so much more with this story, but I had to remind myself, this show is not about me. Mindy Kaling has no idea who I am. Any resemblance to my life is purely coincidental. This show has been out for a while now, and I feel like a lot of people have already given their opinion on it, but now it's time for the opinion that matters the most. Mine. So I'm gonna try this again. I want to talk about this show and what I think could have been done better. And if you're still watching, I'm gonna assume that you've already seen all 4 seasons of Never Have I Ever. If you haven't, I don't know, look it up. Obviously, the show is pretty groundbreaking. I can't ignore the fact that the main character is a South Indian descent teenager growing up in America, a perspective that I don't think has been depicted in American mainstream media before. I have a lot of mixed feelings about this show. On one hand, I really wanted to love it because it was just so relatable. Devi is an overachieving brown noser. I was an overachieving brown noser. Devi was in all the extracurriculars and no sports. I was in all the extracurriculars and no sports. Devi was in mock trial. I was in mock trial. I mean, Devi and I are one and the same. And there's a lot of other aspects of her personality that I feel like resonate with a lot of Indian people growing up outside of the homeland, like her immediately becoming jealous of Anissa when she comes to the school because she just automatically assumes that she must be in competition with this girl because everybody is already comparing the two of them in their heads. Like, I've been there before, you know, and it's all out of naivety and fear, but it's relatable. Some people have said that they did not like this show because Devi was making a lot of questionable choices. Thus making her a very unlikable character. From dating 2 boys at the same time, to starting a rumor that her own friend had an ED, to kissing Paxton while he was a teacher at her school, to just being an overall menace to society. Some people have attributed all these terrible decisions to her being a young and dumb teenager. Other people say it's because she's reeling from the loss of her father, so she's acting out because she doesn't know how to process her grief. I would attribute all of this to bad writing, but more on that later. It is definitely possible to have a TV show with a main character who makes questionable decisions. The first example that comes to mind is Disney Channel's That's So Raven. Raven Baxter is perhaps the most selfish person in the Disney Channel universe. She's a terrible person. She is always acting in her own best interest. If she had a vision that said she would get a kiss from a cute boy, but all she had to do was push her brother into oncoming traffic first, she would do it. And yet all of us are still watching the show and we're rooting for her, like, yeah, push Corey in front of that truck. And I think one of the main reasons that Raven still remains so likable, despite doing questionable things, is because she's just so funny.
Yeah, well, where I was going for here is, I wanted Chelsea, let your art speak for itself. What?
And going back to Never Have I Ever, I wasn't really invested in the romantic portion of the show, which is pretty much the entire show. Like, Team Paxton or Team Ben? I don't know, who gives a shit? I'm gonna be honest. If this show was not about an Indian girl, I would not have watched past the first season. I could go on and on about all the things that irked me about the show, but I am not trying to be a hater here. I am not going to complain that the only person who got any real character development and had an actually interesting plotline is Paxton. I am not going to say that Anissa's character deserved better and she was treated like an afterthought. I am not going to say that Devi's friend Eleanor sounds like she's an AI bot that was forced to watch 1,000 hours of TikToks.
Yes, queen! And now the most important question, what is your panty situation?
No, I am going to be nice. I am going to give constructive criticism. Their house looks like it was decorated by someone who's been to an Indian restaurant once. Okay, that's my last one, I promise. My biggest problem with the show is how they tackle the topic of grief. The show seems to suggest that Devi overcomes the grief of losing her dad by dating boys. The first example of this is seen in the first season. After losing her dad to a heart attack, Devi is quite literally paralyzed with grief. So much so to the point where she needs a wheelchair and she can't even walk anymore. However, she is magically cured when she sees her crush Paxton Hall Yoshida at school. There is a point where Devi's therapist even calls her out and says, "Hey Devi, do you think you're so obsessed with Paxton because you're just trying to avoid dealing with the death of your father?" And Devi says something along the lines of, forget about it. Just a side note. Was anyone actually this obsessed with sex in high school? This was me when I was 16. This was at a time when I was the founder and president of a crochet club at my school called Yarn It. As you can probably tell, I was not getting any action. Of course, I've had quite the glow up since then. At the risk of sounding like a prude, I am sick and tired of watching teenagers have sex. Whatever happened to walking down the hallway holding hands or kissing behind the bleachers? I don't want to see you guys strip each other down and wrestle in bed. Anyways, where was I? Oh yeah. Dead father. There was one moment that really just made me go, okay, I can't with this show. At the end of season 1, Devi joins her mother and her cousin on the beach to disperse her father's ashes. Immediately afterwards, she returns to Ben's car, who was waiting there to make sure that she was okay, and she starts making out with him. Again, I know, this is not meant to be based on my life, but this is just so unrealistic. I hope none of you have to experience this anytime soon, but laying one of your parents to rest will be one of the worst days of your life. I was not present for the scattering of my father's ashes, but I was present for his cremation, and let me tell you something, not fun. Yeah, cremation, not a fan. It's hard to put into words what it's like to be a teenager and watch someone you love so dearly get wheeled into a cremation chamber. It's so sad, it's nauseating, watching your dad leave this world in front of your very eyes. After witnessing something so horrific, imagine, if you will, me leaving the funeral home after watching my dad get cremated and making out with some quirked up white boy from my school. If I did that, I think my father would have crawled out of that cremation chamber, chased me down, and dragged me back into the oven with him.
You kissing? Your father's ashes have barely begun to drift out to sea.
I just got overcome with emotion.
What are you gonna do at my funeral? Just have sex on top of my grave? I pray it's a closed casket.
Some of you might say that Ben and Paxton were providing Devi with friendship and emotional support at a time when she needed it the most. But for a majority of the show, Devi is romantically pursuing and dating either one of these boys, or both at the same time. So they're more than just friends to her, they are her boyfriends. And if you still think I'm reaching when I say that Devi's grief was resolved when she got a boyfriend, there's a scene at the end of season 3 when Devi says to Paxton, and I quote, "You kinda got me through the death of my dad by being a dream." I don't know who needs to hear this, but a man is not the answer to your problems. It is unreasonable to expect that a man is going to fill the void inside. I mean, he'll be filling voids inside you, alright, just not the one your father left. If this show was just about a young Indian girl exploring her sexuality, that would have been great. But the fact that death is thrown in there, and it's suggested that her grief is resolved with the help of her lovers, that is not only unrealistic, that's just bad writing. I'm sorry. I know I'm taking this show way too personally when I said I wouldn't, but put yourself in my shoes, okay? How would you feel? How would you feel if the most traumatic event of your childhood was turned into a Netflix series with 4 seasons? How did I cope with grief as a teenager? I crocheted a lot of stuffed animals, I listened to the 5 albums of System of a Down on repeat, and I developed a unhealthy parasocial relationship with the Game Grumps. I can understand if that would not make for a juicy Netflix rom-com. Despite the story being so personal to me, this show did not make me cry. And keep in mind, I am not a cold-hearted bitch. I am very sappy. I cry at the drop of a dime. If you're looking for a movie that'll make you bawl your eyes out, may I suggest Pixar's Onward. If you lost a parental figure at a young age, Onward will absolutely destroy you. It's about 2 brothers who lost their dad at a young age, and they go on this magical journey as an attempt to bring their father back for just 24 hours, just so they have a chance to talk to him and spend a little bit of time with him. Just 10 minutes into this movie, there was a scene that made me cry. One of the brothers, Ian, bumps into a man that went to college with his dad, and this man starts telling stories about his father, how great he was, how bold of a man he was, and Ian asks this man, "What else do you remember?" That single line is so heartbreaking. When you had such a limited amount of time with your own father, sometimes you feel robbed, you know? Like there's so many experiences that you never had with him. There's so much that you still don't know about him. And you almost feel jealous of people that had more time with your father than you did. That desperation that Ian felt to forge a connection with his father that he barely knew. Ian is so desperate that he reaches out to a complete stranger and has to rely on him for more information about his dad. God, that really got me. That is the depth that I wanted to see from Never Have I Ever. That is what I think was missing from that show. In conclusion, I don't know if there's anyone watching this right now who's currently going through what Devi went through. If I could give you a piece of advice, it gets better. It takes a lot of time, but trust me, have some patience and hang in there because it will get better. In Never Have I Ever, Devi's story ends with her getting into her dream college, having her boyfriend, and living her happily ever after. But in my personal experience, my mental health got a billion times worse when college started. So don't feel bad if it takes you a long time to heal. I didn't realize that nearly all of my issues were caused by unresolved grief. Death does not just affect the presence or absence of a person from your life, it affects every aspect of your life. Grief changes how you view the world, how you interact with your family, how you act in friendships and relationships, your ability to focus, your willpower, your motivation, your relationship with yourself. Everything. It has taken me 10 years and a lot of intense therapy, but I can finally say that I'm beginning to reverse the effects that grief has had on me all these years. And I didn't need a quirked up white boy to help me. Okay, I think that's enough trauma dumping for one day. If you watched Never Have I Ever, did you like the show? Did you hate the show? What did you think the show could have done better? I would love to know your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more. Follow me on Instagram if you want to see more of my embroidery or my daily deranged thoughts. And I will catch you in the next one. Bye for now. So when I was making this video, I was trying to find pictures of myself in my high school days. The context, well, do you even need context for this picture, or would it just be funnier without context? Me and my sister were having a competition to see who could eat food the least attractively, and safe to say I did win the competition. I would love to show you the picture that I took of my sister, but I think she would get very upset if I showed you.